Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Podcasts and Players. And today I have my good friend and battle companion, DM, content creator, and hobbyist voice actor, Feltheleb here with me.
Hello. Oh, thank you for the applause. You're too kind, audience.
My good sir. So this episode is going to be a little bit more off the cuff than other ones because I trust that we can have good things to talk about. I just know that we have a good rapport or track record of having good conversations.
This is already like way too much prpressure to be putting on me.
Oh yeah,
we
so
have
you're gonna
great
have to carry
rapport.
all the weight and make this. You better make this show good. No, I'll start with some easy ones. We were talking about this actually before recording. How you came about the name Feltheleb, which you've a couple times in the past have like sort of tried to distance yourself from, but then you were resigned, like, I guess I have it now. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, I guess it's not so much like it's not that I like want to distance myself. It's sometimes I've thought about, oh, maybe I should like use my real name, but I don't know. I've come to really enjoy Feltheleb, and it's not like Fel and then the Leb, like it's like three separate like strange words put together. Oh, that's how it's pronounced, is Feltheleb. But it's just when I was starting out, and I started out in online doing voice acting, I wanted to ensure that because I've seen a lot of like Chris the voice actor or like Michael the voice actor, or which is not, there's nothing wrong with that, but I wanted to make sure that I had some sort of moniker that was unique enough that I didn't want anyone to, if I were to make a YouTube channel or to make a Twitter account, which I ended up doing both of those, I just didn't want anyone to have my name. And so that's kind of like what I did, is I just chose a name. The name I actually chose was the name of my brother's old World of Warcraft character. It was a night elf warrior, I believe, and I've just stuck with it. I don't know. I like the name. It's fun, although it's kind of hard to describe to people what it is or like how to pronounce it. I don't know. It's just something that I've stuck with.
Yeah, I think it works. I think that's a smart idea. It's hard because you're right. For those who don't know, who are listening, who maybe, because I've had a lot of artists and stuff on my podcast thus far, just because I'm an artist and I kind of, talk to artists. It's sort of a thing. You are in the voice actor circles, and on Twitter, there's lots of, active voice actors who and actresses who do lots of different projects and stuff. But like you said, a lot of them just go by their name, and there's nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes you get sort of lost in the crowd. It's hard to stand out when it's just your name, I suppose. And then there are certain people who have like you said, like a moniker or like a title or something, who just, an example that I can think of off the top of my head is a voice actress who goes by Miss Moonified. And she's
Mooney.
Yeah. So like, obviously she's got a real name, but she does like all sorts of voice acting, some not safe for work stuff. So she decided to go by like a moniker, and that has like, that's like iconic for her. Like she's got her own like cat person sort of avatar, and that's what people know her as.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Mooney. We actually did a project together that used to be on my YouTube page, which I really, the reason that I had used my YouTube page before was just a way to post content that I would have otherwise post to Twitter. Because really, I just like to post stuff on Twitter because that's where a lot of the voice acting game is. That's where like a lot of the voice acting, at least in the hobbyist circle, a lot of what's the word that I'm looking for? Networking takes place there. So I just wanted to, I'd make some videos with some people. Actually, I made one with Mooney. It was actually really fun to get to work with her. We did a skit where she was actually her and then another not safe for work voice actress I know played two not safe for work voice actresses applying for a role, and it was a funny little sketch we did. Yeah, she was really great to work with, and she's really become a paragon both in the not safe for I don't do any not safe for work voice acting, but she's kind of become a paragon in the safe for work and not safe for work realms. But to the point that you were saying, yeah, there's a lot of especially voice actresses that I know where I am following both of their safe for work voice acting account, which I uses their real name, And then they'll have like a counterpart that won't use their real name, which I completely understand. It's that realm, at least just knowing and following Mooney for a while, and other just kind of knowing not safe for work voice actresses and voice actors can be a little sketchy sometimes. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There's always a good amount of degree in kind of removing your name in a space where your content is going to be, heavily looked at, to kind of keep a degree of separation, which is kind of why I wanted to use Feltheleb as well, is to have a degree of separation from my like home life to like my internet persona. It's not something that like I hide from my like friends or family or anything, but it just it makes me feel a little bit like separate in that sense.
Yeah, it's all dependent on like the angle that you approach these types of things from. So like you said, you consider yourself a hobbyist voice actor, and we can get in a little bit to what like your real life plans are. Like you're going to law school, and
I just graduated actually.
Graduated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your plan is to pass the bar and like practice law. And so like that's your actual life plan, where your real name would be kind of important. You can't go into a courthouse and be like, hello, I'm Feltheleb. I'll be representing you today.
I'll try not to. Yeah.
Like that doesn't work. But for a hobby, like having that sort of moniker makes a lot of sense. Whereas like, I guess for me, I use my real name, but I also knew that just my real name's kind of boring. So I added Cool Boy to it.
Cool Boy, baby.
Yeah.
Because I'm a cool boy.
Cool. Well, yeah. A little bit. Like
I'm actually lame, but I just want to feel cool, so I use Cool Boy.
You hit the nail on the head, my friend. Like it's really kind of like I always wanted to be cool, I guess. When you're a kid, you want to have that sort of aura about yourself. And I was the furthest thing from cool for the longest part of my life. And then later on, as I became more confident in myself and embraced my interests unashamed, being a nerd and stuff, like not being ashamed of that and stuff like that. And I grew as a person. I realized that being cool is 100% subjective. And we end up having this idea that like cool is not something you can label yourself as. It's only something that other people can label you as. And I was like, fuck that. I feel like I'm pretty cool. I'm going to name myself Cool Boy Shane. And I have my own ideal for what cool is, and I'm going to try to live to that.
I was the opposite. I wanted to be as lame as possible my entire life. So that's pretty much how I ended up the way that I am. It's just a never-ending crusade to be as lame as possible, when in reality, I know I'm super cool deep down. So I'm glad we can have that. I'm glad we can have that dichotomy.
Very nice. Can I ask though, like, what? So why is this like a humble thing, sort of like you're trying to check your own confidence? Like, seriously though, like I'm asking, like, do you feel like if you don't try to be lamer than you feel like you might be, then you might overextend yourself and look kind of cocky and...
I'm so confused by what you're asking, because I'm not sure if we're still committing to the bit.
Well, no, I'm off the bit. Like, I'm actually talking about like, I'm talking about like self-perception a little bit here.
Ooh.
Yeah, it looks like you got something to say. Go for it.
Well, I just, as far as like self-perception is gone, and as far as, actualizing whether, the other people's perceptions of you, I don't know. I have never, I guess, growing up, I've never really put... I would like to sit here and say that I never put a ton of weight into people's perception of me, but I don't think that's necessarily true. I think when it comes to people like you and me who are creating content for an audience, I think, or even if you're not creating content, if you're performing for an audience, like you're a voice actor, which is still creating content in some respect, I think everyone, especially in a time right now where things are so connected and so dialed in between, there's so many internet points that exist out there. I gotta get all my internet points. I love my Twitter points, your YouTube points. Those are your likes and your dislikes and your views and your likes and your retweets on Twitter. I think at least what I've come to learn about myself is that I do in some way tie some of my self-worth to what, I guess, like what people not value me, because my value I don't think is tied to those things. But I can't sit here and say that it doesn't really feel, it doesn't, it feels good to me to have some sort of validation from other people. And at least for me in that end, it's always good to feel like you're being appreciated in some sense. One thing I think is that, tying it back to voice acting, I think one of the things that really brings down a lot of starting voice actors, especially in the hobbyist sphere, is not getting validation in a sense that is, I guess, like appropriate. Like people don't get the level of validation that they think they're going to get when they start out doing voice acting, or even when it comes to content creation. And you were talking about this with Dingo, I think a little bit on one of the previous episodes, about how like at some level, one of the things that you have to do if you're going to break through is learn to not tie that sense of validation that you, because I think it's completely normal for everyone to feel a sense of validation. It's absolutely normal to feel that and to recognize that. But I think the people who are able to, kind of break through in a field like this, content creation, you have to learn to be okay with the fact that you're not always going to get that sense of validation. You have to be okay with quote unquote failure. I don't know if that was the kind of answer that you were looking for your question, and that was
I wasn't looking for anything. I'm
far
your
removed
brain.
from the bit. So far removed from the bit.
No, man, we're getting serious here, man. I'm in my armchair, smoking a pipe in front of the fireplace and waxing philosophical with you right now. So
I would love if that were true. I'm sitting in my bed, looking at a bowl of empty pad thai, which I just ate, and my Nintendo Switch, which is just begging for me to get on it and to play Animal Crossing.
I'm in full support of that, but I have a feeling that you might get a bit distracted.
Absolutely. I would never be playing Animal Crossing, tending to my villagers and my virtual garden when I have a wonderful conversation to be had with you, Shane.
I do appreciate that. I do have to schedule it around my podcast. If I could somehow multitask and still give a good podcast, I might do it. But I'm too afraid to even try. I know like practice might get me there, but I'm not going to do the trial and error to get to that point.
Well, isn't there the guy who made a complete talk show on his Animal Crossing New Horizons village? And he had like Elijah Wood on it. This is a real thing. I don't know. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's called the Animal Crossing Talk Show.
I'll have to look that up because I know Elijah Wood plays because I saw the thing where him going to people's towns for turnip prices, but
correct.
That
all I'm saying is
really
it can be done, and clearly you're not as good as that person, I guess.
Yeah, no.
You could be a better host, because we could be doing this in Animal Crossing, and you could be helping me tend my plants, because I have too many of them.
Yeah, I just found out. You know what? No, actually, I'm not going to talk about Animal Crossing. I was about to really enthuse here, but I'm gonna use the scissors and snip off that. And we're going to move it away because I had another point I wanted to bring back to what you were talking about. The not tying yourself to your self-worth rather to likes and things like that is very, very important. I did talk about this a little bit in some past episodes. Dingo was one and some others, but like I recently came across some of my old animation files from like 2008. Like, I'm in high school and I'm just fucking around with Flash, like Macromedia Flash before Adobe owned it, right? Mm. And I have so many unfinished projects. And the reason I would get like 6 seconds in, 14 seconds into a project and just stop because I was just not confident enough that I could make anything worthwhile. I would start lots of different things, I'd lose interest and then do something else. And that like plagued my life. Part of it I do blame ADHD on. I'm a young high schooler, teenager with ADHD. Of course, like it's going to be hard to finish some things, but I finished things. Like I finished schoolwork when I needed to. Like just doing stuff on my own was really hard. And even worse, like even when I did finish something, I put it out there. And of course, I had like no following or something when I was on like DeviantArt or whatever. So like I got maybe one comment from one person that said, "Oh, this is cool," and I expected more, and that disappointment discouraged me. Which is very dumb. If anybody listening are thinking about doing anything, voice acting, making music, making art, whatever it is, you need to be prepared for a cold reception, especially when you're just starting. You need to be prepared to be rejected when you audition. You need to be prepared for no one to listen to your SoundCloud. You need to be prepared to have no followers on your DeviantArt page. Okay, that is a reality.
And you're gonna have a DeviantArt page,
right? I do not have one anymore. I deleted it years ago. But you gotta be prepared for that, because if you're not, that disappointment can discourage you from doing more, and thus you stop growing. And like, I could be much better than I am at several things if I did not get discouraged at that stage. If I had just kept it up, I'd be way better than I am right now. It's very important to be determined in that sense. And I'm not saying that like you should feel guilty for dropping a project that you're not passionate about, right? But if you make a goal to do something, especially something that's kind of small, like a small step, do everything you can to just like complete that goal. Because I guarantee you, if you do complete that goal, even if by the end of it you're sick of that project or whatever it is, you're gonna feel good that it's done with. You're gonna feel good that you completed something, and then that reaffirms to you that, oh my God, I can do this, even if nobody else saw it. Suddenly your self-worth isn't attached to what people think of you online. It's to your own abilities to make things, which I think is way more reliable.
And I think as well, one thing that I would like, if I were to go back and give myself starting out as a hobbyist, and the reason that I say hobbyist voice actor, and the reason that I'm particular about that is because I think one piece of advice that I would give myself back in the day is to take stock of why you're doing the thing that you want to do and make sure that your goals are aligning with that reason. And what I mean by that is, like, when I started out doing voice acting, I was just kind of following along with the trends that everyone else was doing without really because, I saw kind of what everyone else was doing and I thought, oh, this is what you do to be in this community, instead of thinking, why am I doing voice acting? Why do I want to do it? That my answer for that back then and right now is that I require some sort of creative outlet. Otherwise, I go just absolutely crazy. And, I have no aspirations of doing these sorts of things, professionally, whether it's creating content or voice acting. It's just something that I really enjoy doing. But if your goal, if it's something, what I realized, I think maybe a little bit too late, is that because I'm not doing it professionally, for me to put way too much stock into, because, being a professional is never my goal. I was putting in a professional amount of stock into my voice acting persona, which ended up hurting me emotionally in certain times in my life, where had I just been looking at it as something that I want to do to actually help my mental health, which is what it started as, I think I would have been a lot better off. And one thing that I've come to realize is that when it comes to, pad thai coming up, one thing that I wish I had realized sooner is that I can make content that is less serious. I can put less work into, well, not like less work, but I can choose how much work I put into something that fits with my time, and I do not have to put as many deadlines on myself that I need to, as if I were doing this for professional reasons. Now, that was my journey. But if you're, of course, in the same way, if your journey is to become famous, I would say in the same way, make sure you're taking it at the level of seriousness that it requires for you to do so. You know what I mean? If you, especially in the voice acting realm, because I will tell you this, as someone who has been paid for voice acting gigs and as someone who has been along with the journey of many burgeoning voice actors, friends of which that I now see and am fully confident are going to be, in animes and in, really great figures in the voice acting world, whether it's online or not, people that I consider my friends now. Those of them that are really successful in the realm of voice acting, they take it so seriously. It is not just a hobby for them. And I am always floored by the amount of dedication that they are willing to put forward in, whether that's in honing their craft, honing their abilities, auditioning for projects, finding projects. It's something that, one thing when I started out is, I didn't realize how much work it takes and actually to get casted and see a project all the way through to its fruition. It's not as simple as just buying a mic from home, I was about to say Home Depot, but I don't think they sell mics, from Best Buy, and throwing up a couple of auditions. You're not going to become Matt Mercer doing that. And I say Matt Mercer because it's one that I'm sure people who play Dungeons and Dragons, a voice actor that you will be aware of, the audience will be aware of. There are tons of voice actors out there for all kinds of different things. And in order to get to a professional level, it really is a grind. You have to put forth the effort if you want to see that effort realized. I feel like that's true of Dungeons and Dragons content as well, though, right? Or any kind of content.
It's true of everything. You gotta grind.
Right. The people who are quote unquote like famous for this, there's a reason that the quality of their content is better than the people who aren't famous. With only a few like exceptions, most people get recognized for the amount of time that they put into their craft.
There's different variables to that depending on what it is, right? Like if we're just talking about YouTube success, there are people that are successful on YouTube who aren't like actually people, but they're organizations that like repost the same baby songs over and over before Kappa was a thing, and they were making millions of dollars. Like talent, maybe there's some sort of talent with business acumen there, but like if we're talking about like individuals, right? You, me, or anybody else listening to this who's trying to make it out on their own, the unpleasant, ugly truth of anything that you're doing is that you're gonna have to grind. You're gonna have to grind, even if you love it. You're gonna have to, because the boons that you're looking for, like networking with the right people who introduce you to the right people who then get you the job that you're looking for, or so like networking, or like maybe just getting that lucky viral hit for whatever thing that you made or were a part of. Obviously talent will get you your foot in the door. Talent is what gets people to even consider you for projects and things like this. However, it's a lot of luck and a lot of hard work that gets you past that point.
Right.
Like I said earlier, like I look at some of my old animations and stuff I worked on. I had a lot of talent. I even saved some on my computer. I exported those old files because I want to post them somewhere eventually to show people like what I was working on in high school that I thought was actually pretty damn good. But I never finished half of this shit. And the reason I didn't do that was because the grind was unpleasant. I didn't want to put in the work. And a lot of people will see certain other people who just get viral hits and they become big really fast or something. And it's like, those people didn't do nothing and then just suddenly became famous. Like those people grinded too. Just because you're seeing or discovering them for the first time, or maybe they did get lucky quick. The formula, and I probably said it in another podcast, is that busy people get lucky. You want to get lucky, you need to be busy. You need to keep working at it.
There's a story that like I think kind of coincides with that, and I don't know if he would be okay with me telling the story. And I promise you, I'm not doing this for clout. But there is when I was in high school, there was a kid who I did theater with in high school, and he was really, really good. And he was a year older than I was. So I'm 25 right now. He's 26 now. And when he left high school, he had mentioned, I guess, maybe, doing theater or something in the future. I lost contact with him. I come back into contact with him just a couple years ago. I think maybe 2 years ago. I had been in an online voice acting competition, and I had gotten through to the semifinals round of it. And a friend of his, this kid that I'm talking about, had also get through. He reaches out to me on my Twitter, on my Feltheleb account, and we recognize that he tells me, yeah, after high school and after college, I think he moved out to California, and he had just been trying to get voice acting gigs, and he had landed a lot of really big gigs, and he's just been talking to me. He was like, I know eventually, I've been working hard, and it was pretty much clear to me that he had moved out to California. He was working really hard, and this kid has an amazing voice. So it was no surprise to me. We caught up. I come to learn later that he had just recently been accepted to what I can only imagine for him is going to be, if not the biggest of his career, it has certainly made him a celebrity now. The person I'm talking about is Jonas Scott, who is the voice actor for Legoshi in Beastars. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I am not.
Series on Netflix. It is a Netflix series, at least it is a Netflix series. He's the English voice actor of the main character, and he's incredible. And if I'm saying this now, I know this is probably a plug. Everyone should go check out the series on Netflix. That kid, it's so crazy for me to see him able to succeed in that respect, because so many doors have been open to him, and he's pretty much living his best dream right now. And I know it's because of the hard work that he had set out to do from the time that I knew him until now. It's been a long time. I mean, since high school, it's been has it been like 8 years or so since high school? But he's put in the grind, he's put in the work, and it's really paying off for him. And there's, to me, nothing more gratifying than seeing that payoff for someone.
Yeah, and he could have just as easily been looked over for somebody different because of how competitive it is. And so, like, I'm sure he would agree that hard work and tenacity kept him there, kept him in the game, and it was the luck that was the payoff, right? And so a lot of people, they move out to California with the same aspirations, same ideas, and they work for 5 years and they're still getting bit parts. And at some point, you know, you got to ask yourself, how long am I willing to do this for? Am I doing this? You know, I'm bouncing from apartment to apartment with like 4 roommates every time, you know, in every place that I live. I don't have my own place. I've been working for this long, and I still don't have a career, even though I've been in the business this long. A lot of people by that point will just stop. They'll just drop out of that game, maybe move back to their hometown, or maybe get a different job in the industry that's a little bit easier and less money, less clout, but hey, at least it's like stable or something, right? There's a lot of these sort of stories where people don't make it, and the reason is, and I think a lot of us don't remember this, I think we forget this, is that being a voice actor in this case, or anything like that, right, especially in the industry, is not the same as being a doctor. Everyone needs doctors. Doctors are in high demand pretty much everywhere you go. But voice actors, or anyone whose money comes from media or entertainment, or basically just celebrity, right? That is going to be way harder to get into because we only really know so many people. Like, there's only so many people that can be celebrities. Mm-hmm. Like, not every actor can be a Brad Pitt. I'm sorry, but that's just, like, there's too many people acting for everyone to be that famous. So you're going to have people who work and not make it. So another thing to warn people about is you got to do what, as I said, like, we keep mentioning Dingo's podcast, but that, like, as of recording this, that podcast literally just came out. Right. During that podcast, she says, do what makes you happy, right? And you, to an extent, you got to just focus on that and be aware of the risks that run with this, where you might not make it. And if you don't make it, are you okay with that? If you're putting all your eggs in this basket, what happens when all those eggs get cracked? Like, what are you going to do? Yeah.
And I should say,
it's a tough question.
And I should say that as well, that like like I said before, you know, I haven't talked to Jonah in even a while. I talked to him a little bit ago because I was planning on going out to California. So I don't know, I definitely don't want to sit here and talk and pretend like I know anything about his story beyond how I know him, or pretend that I'm going to, speak to his story at all. But at least what I can say is like you were saying, in an industry that is so saturated, a lot of the times it's right. Like, if you want to be quote unquote famous, sometimes you just got to get like lucky. And of course, like with the lottery, you can buy, like, putting in the time, buying more and more lottery tickets will give you more bites at that apple. Yeah. If you make 100 Dungeons and Dragons videos, you have a much greater chance that one of them is going to go viral than if you only make one of them. But, but what's going to keep you into making 100 Dungeons and Dragons video? At the end of the day, if you don't love to do that, it's going to be just emotionally draining to do that. Right. So I don't know, like what we've been saying this entire time is, at least find what you like to do. And if you either, I guess I'll say this, find what you like to do and do that, or at least be prepared for the emotional drain of doing something you don't like to do. In order to get to that other goal that you're reaching for. I think those, I think both of those are equal ways to go. If you just be aware that it'll be emotionally draining, don't think that it's going to be an easy road, because I don't think it is for anybody. I don't think anybody would tell you that. Yeah. Welcome to Career Advice with Shane and Fel. Today we're talking about... I'm currently unemployed. We're both unemployed. So all right, let's switch gears a little bit. By the way, before we move on, I feel like I didn't plug you properly in the beginning. People, this is Feltheleb. He has his own YouTube channel and a Twitter. Follow him in the Twitter. That's right in the center of the screen. And also go to his videos. He has been recently posting his own D&D content using his voice acting skills that he has accrued. And some of it's pretty fucking funny. I gotta admit, you're a good writer, man. Thanks, bud. Yeah. I like writing more than I like voice acting, so that really means a lot. Well, it's a good thing you're going into law. Yeah. So yeah, peeps, check them out, and from here, I guess we're gonna move into actual D&D stuff. So I'm sure anyone who's like aware of what my stuff that I've made is, like,
they know that I have voice actors who work on my projects. So they probably thought when I said, "Hey, I have voice actors here," like, "Oh, is this someone who voices a role in the Peace Guild?" Here's the weird thing: you've never voiced it in any of my videos.
Not yet.
I've not yet.
I'm gonna convince you one of these days.
I gotta finish some shit first before I can open up new projects. But there's something. Maybe we'll talk about it later. But I might have something coming up. But in any case, Fel is actually a mutual friend of Aiden, who was on episode 4. For anyone who listened to that, like, I remember because you were always commenting on his stuff, and I was like, man, I'm seeing this Fel guy all over the place. And then I got invited to a game with Eldritch Sugar, which we mentioned on episode 6. And in that game, Eldritch, and she still hasn't posted the audio for this because she's doing school stuff right now. So I don't know when that's coming out, but it was like this 4-hour-long one-shot that we call the Patronizers because we were all warlocks. You played a bugbear named, what was it, Servier?
Servier.
Yeah, I played a drow lady named Giliara. Maddie Carl was in it. She played a little boy named Rhubarb. Vitamin Dieter from episode 3 was in it, and he played this, like, he's like a dragonborn, but he had like he had like a Napoleon complex because he's really short, so he's a barbarian.
Yes. He was not a kobold. He
was a barbarian warlock, dragonborn, which was really funny. And then the last episode, which hasn't come out at the recording of this, but Weaving Chaos was in, and he played an ooze guy that like made himself go into a wolf, so it was like reverse vor.
It wasn't great. That was a non-great part of the episode.
Yeah, we're all just like, why are you doing this? And he's just like, oh, I'm like, stop. Oh my god, we talk about that in episode last episode, like episode 8 or whatever. But who am I missing? I'm missing one. Captain Cheeky. Captain Cheeky played like a snake boy.
Oh yeah.
Who was just like, I don't know what's going on the whole time. He was just like freaked out by all of us strong people who were like doing all this crazy stuff. Anyway, we played in this one shot all together, all of us content creators, and that's where I met you for the first time, Fel.
Yeah, it was definitely like weird. I felt, because I had seen like pretty much, I want to say like I have known of all of your content. And it was also funny because I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the only like non like artist like in the group. So there was this really funny part in the very beginning where everyone was like sharing drawings of their characters, and I was like, and it was like coming down to me and the Discord like list, and I was like, oh god, I can't draw. I'm gonna have to share reference images like a scrub. But it was, yeah, that was a really fun one shot.
Yeah, that was awesome. And then from there, you ran a one shot, which was like a heist, and you invited me, and Aiden played in that, and it was Vitamin and Eldritch. Or I keep calling him Vitamin. His name is Dieter. We're like buds at this point, but I always like default to the first one, like it's his first name. His first name is Vitamin. He played anyway. It was a great time. I had a super fun time playing that. So I want to pick your brain a little bit about DMing.
Sure.
And your process with that. Like, first, like kind of a general question. What advice would you give people who are getting into DMing?
Oh, wow. I should say that I've only been like real-time DMing like one shots, and then I just recently started DMing my own kind of my like first. This is like undercutting all of my credibility. I've been DMing one shots for a while, but only a full length big campaign for I think we're going into our 4th month now. So what are you looking for exactly? Just like any advice?
I guess, well, all right. So this is your first full length campaign. Why don't you share with us, like, what have you learned in these 4 months? Like, what's stuff that you started out thinking you knew, and then at this point you're like, man, I don't think I know this as well as I do. Or
oh wow. I guess the advice that I would give is, so the players that I play with, they're a bunch of guys, and we had done a campaign together, which was, I will describe it. It wasn't a bad campaign by any stakes, but I would describe it as like low stakes emotionally. And one thing that I wanted to do, because I really enjoy narrative, I really enjoy storytelling, and I really enjoy character growth. And so I wanted to kind of make sure at the beginning of this campaign, the one that we're doing right now, that we all had some sort of emotional connection. So when I had done my previous campaigns, there was never really any, it was just like, show up at the table, tell us your character. And what I did for this campaign is I ensured that I spent at least an hour with every one of my players separately after we had all done a session 0 together to kind of create our world and kind of talk about our expectations for the game, which is also something you should do. You should have a session 0, talk about your expectations with your players. I had spent an hour with each of them working specifically on their character. And that has been, I think, the number one, because I know that there's a lot of DMs out there. I don't know if anyone really decides not to do that. Decides I'm just going to make a campaign and it's my story and it's going to be, the characters interacting with my story. Having the way that I've done it, focusing the story on the characters as opposed to introducing the characters to a story. In that sense, being proactive in your storytelling as opposed to having the characters simply be reactive to your story. The proactive approach has made all the difference in our enjoyment of the game. I constantly ask for feedback from my players, and it's been night and day their ability to, I never really saw my party as a bunch of role players. I do a lot of role playing in the group, but I always kind of thought I was the only one. So I was a little bit worried when I was going to become the DM that the role playing aspect would go away. But I have found that connecting these characters emotionally to the world and giving them wants and desires and tying those wants and desires to the story that we're telling has made all the difference in their ability to role play, their emotional connection to the stories. The choices they make are different and are unexpected to me because they're aligning with their character. And if you really enjoy the grind of the game, and go ahead and enjoy the grind of the game, enjoy the numbers, the dice rolling. It has been so much fun to simply get to explore these characters' emotions and get to see them interacting with the world as a character. That's the advice I would give I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not sat down and with each of my players talked about kind of their wants and their desires starting into the campaign. And that all started with really one question. I told them all, I was you can, whatever you tell me, you can tell me whatever you want, and I will take that as a gift, and I will likely use it in the campaign. Tell me whatever you want about your character and your background, your motivation if you want, but I need to know one thing, and it's the only homework you have for me, and that's why are you on this adventure? Because I'm not going to have a bunch of, and I didn't say this part, but I don't want to have a bunch of people who are simply that. It should not be, at least in my opinion, the DM's job to determine, to kind of create a story, to create a reason for you. I think that should be, there's so much up to the DM. One thing that should be up to the players is their reason for being on the adventure. That's at least how I feel about that subject. I think that it's already so much to be able to plan an entire campaign without planning things that happen before the campaign. I don't want to start session 1 and have to kill your parents to get you to do something because I don't know how you're going to react to your parents dying or what that's going to mean for you. I think people should come in with at least having that conversation beforehand has helped a lot. And those conversations I had in the very beginning, I look at those before I plan every next session because those are the things that are driving those characters. And of course, I want to know how to plan my sessions in order to take into account the work that my players have done emotionally. I think it's a gift to them, and it certainly makes it easier for me to have that information.
I'm so impressed with this answer, man, because I think it highlights this sort of. So I wouldn't even say that the grind is necessarily what is the dichotomy here. I think because the grind is just part of it. When you get a nat 20 in a hopeless situation, that mood change, that turns everything around. Or when you get a nat 1 ruining a perfect plan, again, those are great moments. So the numbers can really make that stuff, those moments shine, because you can use that to then role play out the situation, the tragedy of it, or the glory of it, or whatever it is. But I think really the dichotomy that with your answer you just illustrated is proactive and reactive, like you said. There are a lot of DMs out there that have their own story. And it's clear, if you're paying attention, when you go into their group, they might be your friend, but this is their world. And you're just in their world, right? And I've had a lot of games I've played where it's felt like that at times. Like I'm not really, I have no agency here. I'm on a railroad going through the adventure that they wrote, being a part in their plan, right? And what you've described essentially is like, all right, before I even decide what I'm going to do, what do you want? And I think that's so important. And the fact that you go a step further with those hour-long conversations, I don't think that's ever happened with me. No one's ever asked, like, talk to me for like a good long time about what I want from a campaign like you just described. And I think that's very, you're probably in for a really amazing, memorable long-term campaign based on what you said, especially since I played with you and I know that you're a good DM, even in one shots. You probably are going to be one of the best DMs that these people have ever had.
Well, let me also say that, like, there are scenarios, like, if you are doing something where, and I actually talked about this on the Arcane Gate, which is a Twitch show that is run by Fallen Monk D20. He's one of the hosts, and Denaru, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I talked about this on their stream where I said, like, you know, if you want to be reactive, there are certainly groups that want to play Skyrim. They want to be dropped in a world and do their own thing, and you just kind of like throw quests at them and you throw problems with them, and there's no, you know, there may be some sort of grand overarching thing, but if it's Skyrim, it's Skyrim. You can do whatever you want. You can choose to go and fight the dragons and go on the mountain with the people, the Greybeards, or, you know, you can just do what you want. But, you know, one of the things that was the impetus of my decision to have those conversations with my players is that we kind of sat down in our session 0 and I asked the question, I was like, you know, how long do you want this to last? If the answer is until it stops, then maybe it makes sense to have a more reactive world. But we kind of sat down and we said, okay, we want to have an adventure that we can do until the start of the next school year. So around like September, October. So that for me, I was like, okay, I need to set out a story, and I only have so much time to do the things that I want to do. So I need to make this, I want to ensure that my players are having an experience that is tailored to them, because not only will that make it easier for me, because I will have a clear direction of where to go, I think it'll be more rewarding for them. And of course, that necessarily implies like a little bit of railroading on my end. I always look at it as I try to make the logical choice be the best choice that kind of like fits in the narrative. That is to say, like, logically, it looks like the next step we should do is the one that makes sense for the narrative that I think would be appropriate to tell. That's not to say that my players don't have free will. Guys, if you're listening to this, they can do whatever they want if they want to. Like, nothing is going to stop them from taking out a sword and stabbing the nearest bartender. But I think what I've done a good job of, or at least I hope I've done a good job of, is showing that there are going to be consequences to those actions. And when you are emotionally connected to a character, and you're kind of really feeling yourself living in the world, I think you're more willing to take on those consequences. If we were playing a game where, you know, there's always talk of like murder hobos. If you're going around like murdering innocents, like it's clear to me that you're a little bit emotionally disconnected from the character. You can say, oh no, it's just the character that's emotionally disconnected. But of course, you're not going around killing people if you're attributing empathy in the way that you're like a normal person would be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully you're not playing with actual serial killers who are, you know, giving these warning signs. And you're like, huh, you always play a murder hobo. That's
kind of weird how you keep killing them. Well, no, I mean, I had a moment in in this campaign that I did where they rescued this guy from a chain demon who was basically had been torturing this dude for weeks, showing him his innermost fears, and the dude was comatose because of it. They brought him back to the kind of temple where he lived at, and they found his son, a young child who was just kind of sitting around waiting for his father to get better. One of my players took the time to go and visit with that child and let him know that his father was going to be okay, and this is the warlock of our group, made a specific point to talk to his patron to see if there was anything he could get to do to help this man, because he felt the pain that the child was feeling in having lost, quote unquote, lost his father being comatose. Something that tied in with the background of that player's character. And without having taken the time to talk to that player about his character's background, that, which in my mind is one of the most wonderful stories I've ever gotten out of Dungeons and Dragons, never would have happened had I not taken the time to be like, tell me about why you're on this journey. Tell me about the emotional stakes that are involved for your character. I want to know your wants and I want to know your needs. Had I not done that, we would have missed out on something like that. And there have been, throughout this campaign that we've been running, just countless examples of times where the backstories that we have talked about have led to really great emotional moments. And when someone watches, I made this point on the Arcane Gates stream the other day. When you watch a movie like, and I know I'm stealing this from someone, I want to say I'm taking this from Brennan Lee Mulligan, the host of Dimension 20, his podcast, The Adventuring Academy. He makes a point in one of those episodes of his podcast that's like, at the end of Lord of the Rings, like, no one's gonna talk about the like sick loot that Frodo had at the end of it. No one's gonna talk about, like, he's probably better at I'll say this, he's probably better at swinging a sword. He has probably leveled up. But when people talk about like the stories they get out of Dungeons and Dragons, like you just told me about the, like, when you mentioned the Patronizers game where Weaving Chaos tried to like reverse vor himself into a wolf. That story you didn't mention like the sick loot we got out of it, or the fact that we could have like leveled up at the end of it, because that's not like what, at least for me, that's not what I like. Like, I'm never gonna like go up to my girlfriend and be like, yeah, babe, I leveled up today. Like, who gives a shit? I want to tell my girlfriend that I slayed a dragon, I killed a king. You know, I want to tell her about the stories where, you know, I confronted my arch nemesis. That's what makes good storytelling. A cool sword at the end of things. There's a reason that the story of King Arthur starts with the cool sword. He doesn't get it at the end. You know what I mean?
They're MacGuffins. They're tools to help tell a good story. You know, you're right about all that. Like, it's these moments. It's ingredients, right? So you mentioned that you do railroad sometimes. I wanted to mention, like, we all railroad a little bit. Like, you have some of the work as the DM to push things along when the players are a bit lost, or they don't know what to do. And sometimes it's nice to use your power to put pressure on them, to make them make a decision when they're putzing around or whatever, right? Like, you can set the pace for things by having things happen at a certain way. So, like, you do exercise some power here, right? You're a player too, as the DM. Like, you have your own things that you can do here. So, like, railroading is a tool. Magic items are tools. These are tools to help advance the narrative. And I think the ultimate goal, as you kind of searched for by talking with your players beforehand, what their aspirations were, what they wanted to get out of the game, right? Those are the ultimate goals. So the magic sword that someone gets, right? Well, if that person's like a sword fighter and, like, you know, their master killed their parents or whatever and kidnapped them, and then they realized it later in life that they're only an orphan because the person that raised them killed their fucking parents, and now they're on a quest to kill that guy. By the way, just made that up. That's a great idea for a character. If anyone wants to use it, you have my permission. But, like, if that guy gets this magic ass sword, that person's going to be more likely to confront that master, which is a great story moment, right? So, like, the sword itself isn't necessarily the cool thing. Like, it's definitely cool, but it's cool because it enables you to tell more story. It enables you to do more with that character. That's why these tools are good. That's why sometimes, you know, DM's got to railroad a little bit, right? I think I mentioned this in a pot. I mentioned this somewhere. Maybe I told you about it. I'm not sure where I mentioned this, but I had a game I played where I was DMing for Pathfinder, and a friend of mine had a backstory where he was an exiled prince from this land, that there was a coup and his guardian basically whisked him away across the ocean to this continent that we were playing on. And so he knew that he was this exiled prince, but he went by a different name. So he's like going by the name Elric, but his real name was like something Ishval, like he was a prince of the Ishval royal family. So Elric and the group are moving through this crowd in this like mining city, like in a valley or whatever, with all these like dwarves and humans, everybody walking around. Basically, he's trying to like blend into the crowd to follow somebody. They're trying to shake down someone for the quest that they're currently doing. And someone makes a perception check and notices that they're being watched by somebody in the crowd. And so they assume, oh, this person is involved in the quest or whatever. So we need to like lose this person, right? So they try to lose them. They fail. This guy shows up behind Elric, pulls a knife out and says, "Die, son of Ishval." And the look on my player's face when he saw that I just randomly in the middle of their quest brought up this third character from his backstory that's like an assassin sent to make sure that this royal line dies was priceless. He did not expect that. He didn't even ask for it. But because he gave me that info, I was able to create this moment for him, right? Where suddenly now all the players are like, what's going on here? Now there's this intrigue. And so if they wanted to pursue a different quest line with his background, which I'm sure he'd be really interested in, now everyone's got this sort of, there's a stake here. Like they saw the assassin. This is like a real thing. It basically everything that you write in your backstory becomes validated immediately, because now there's a person there that just, it's almost like the killer vouches for you. You know, it's like, I don't know. Just these types of moments can only happen if you know, if you care to know what your players want and what they've written for you. You know, because we write backstories for ourselves, but we write them for our DMs. We want our DMs to know these things because we want our DMs to use these things.
Well, I mean, and I think, and one thing I think one of the dumbest things you can do as a DM is to not recognize the gift that a backstory is. Like, to me, I come from an improv comedy background, and when someone gives you something like their story that, how do I put this? I think it is easy to get bogged down in thinking, I'm the DM, this is my world, I am going to fit in this backstory to my world, instead of allowing the backstory to influence. Like, I don't start with the world and try to plug in the puzzle piece. I start with the puzzle piece of the background and build my world out from there. Like, for example, one of my players, he's a wizard in my campaign, and he was like, I'm from a wizarding school in this one of these countries. And I said, oh, cool, like it's a wizarding school. He's like, yeah, it's like a really old school, I think, and it's one that I'm like heavily involved in. And I was like, cool, I'll just come up with a name. And we called it the Golden Academy. And I got to thinking about like the role of the Golden Academy. Sure enough, he tells me, you know, we work out that he has like a rival there. Sure enough, like midway through the campaign, he gets a letter from his rival saying that, you know, the headmaster of the Golden Academy's died and his rival is taking the place's acting headmaster. And it wasn't even a thought. He like looks at the rest of the party and he's like, guys, we're going to have to go to the Golden Academy like now. And this player, I never really would have like expected that like clear of a demand from the character. But like, had I not taken into account, we would have missed out on this wonderful adventure to the Golden Academy. We got so much lore out of it. We got some character development. We got to meet all these wonderful characters. And it's just like, it just seems crazy to me that people hear a background like, you know, even taking some of the backgrounds from the book, like, oh, like I was with a traveling, or I was a gladiator, or I was at like a traveling circus. There's so much baked into those things, which can make for such great moments. And like you said, like people want to feel like they're, I mean, this is at its simplest, Dungeons and Dragons, at its simplest, is a form of collaborative storytelling.
That's it.
And I always come back to that.
Yeah.
That it is just a bunch of people. There are some dice to help us along because random probability makes things a little bit more interesting. And there are rules in order to make sure that, you know, we are keeping things going smoothly. But at the end of the day, like, it's pretty much just like a bunch of people sitting down and being like, all right, guys, let's tell a little story today.
Yeah. Which
sounds kind of silly, but like, that's all it is. And if the story is not collaborative, if it's this reactive sense where people are just happening to fall into your various like traps, I don't know. I think, and especially as like a player, because I'm a player as well, I want to feel like I'm contributing in some way to the story. I want to feel like it's collaborative. And I want to have moments that make me feel like my character is more than just a sheet of paper in a dungeon. I want to feel like more than I'm just the numbers on my page. If I write down that I am an acolyte of a god, I don't want the only time for that to come up, that background to come up, is when I'm using the acolyte feature. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This kind of harkens back to a lot of things that I've talked about in the past regarding like styles of play. I do realize that everyone has their own tastes. Some people might prefer a more reactive game, but I think we need to understand that these aren't just like two extremes. It's like sliders, you know? Like you can have moments that you can make more reactive and moments where you can dial it back and let the characters' stories, you know, let the characters tell the story essentially, right? And something is like, personally as a player, something that I've noticed that is more gratifying is when I've had DMs make up backstory elements about my character without telling me and then revealing it in game, like my character had amnesia. And, you know, that can be fun. If I know that's the kind of game we're playing, that can be kind of fun. But I would not like that if that was every game I played, where they were just making shit up about my character without telling me, because it assumes stuff about me that I wasn't really okay with, right?
Right.
However, if I write stuff about my background, I had a rival, or I had a teacher, or I had this, I am now naming people. I am giving the DM daggers to stab me with, right? I'm giving them these people, and I'm giving them basic like personality traits and a history, and saying, do with this what you will. A lot of DMs don't use all of it, but they'll use a few of it, and when those things come back, it feels real because it feels like the thing that you made, like when you typed it up or whatever, came to life. That's gratifying, right?
Yeah.
Saying like having a character and then having the DM introduce like an old flame that you've never thought about or heard about before is one thing. That's kind of like, well, all right, sure, I'll play along. Like obviously you want to play the game, so you just kind of play along like, oh, this is someone that I used to. And you kind of, it's almost like you said, like with your background in improv, like someone who enjoys that kind of thing would actually probably get a real good kick out of that, right? But it doesn't have the same impact. It's a more whimsical take on it. It doesn't have the same impact as you write about somebody in your backstory and then that person shows up, because then it's a lot more like, oh shit, you know, like there's a bigger emotional impact there.
Yeah.
So as a DM, you have these again are tools, right? The characters that someone writes about in their backstory, even if you don't sit down and talk with them for whatever reason, like if you've got these backstories and they're detailed, using these characters in ways to compel the players to take some sort of action, you know, whatever action they want to take, right? Just it gets them invested because they wrote that and now it's alive,
right?
And so you gotta be able or be willing to use their stuff, and then, you know, again, it's a slider. Sometimes you can be more reactive when you need to move things along or impose a little bit of a threat. Like you said, some DMs pull traps on players, and if that happens all the time, the players get sort of like annoyed and they don't want to play. It's not as fun. But if the players are having a great time and like their characters are basically just sort of having their way all the time, and then you just fucking pull a fast one on them, that doesn't seem like betrayal to me. That seems like, oh shit, I forgot we're not all powerful, and like we are in a world that can react to us too, right? So like, I don't know. There is a balance to be struck there, and you got to read your players and figure out what they like and also what you like as a player or DM. Like this has to be communicated.
And I think at the end of the day, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go for it.
I'll kind of quicken this up because I know that we're coming towards the end of our time. At the end of the day, like just talk to, like, I consume a lot of Dungeons and Dragons content. One of those being Crit Crab. I don't know if you're aware of their content.
Yeah, I know of Crit Crab.
Someone you need to have on the podcast at some point, I think. But
I got a list of people that other people have asked me to invite on, and I'm like, man, I'm only one man. I can only invite so many people on at a time.
Well, Crit Crab, for those of you unfamiliar, has like kind of like a storytelling vibe where he tells kind of like player stories, and most of them are horror stories. I feel like I think those are the ones that are the most interesting to listen to. And gosh, and this is something he says as well, but how easy would it be to avoid some of this stuff, DM or player, by just talking to your players about stuff? It is truly blows my mind that there are people out there who are like, well, the only time I see or talk to my players is when we sit down at the table with each other. And it's just like, for example, not everyone can do the critical role thing of like sitting down and working together with their background, like they're working out their background of like, here's everything that happened up to my character's birth to now, which, by the way, is not something that they do. Like pretty much listening to interviews with them, like one of the things they do, which is something I do as well. It's like, you talked about, an old, someone coming from their backstory, like introducing someone from their backstory that they, that you were not aware of or you didn't know existed. Whenever I do that, always before the session, when I'm planning the session, I just message my players on DM. I say, hey, you remember how you were, you went to that training camp a long time ago? You would have met a lot of people there. Is it okay if one of the people you met is this person and here's everything about them? And inevitably they'll be like, oh yeah, that's great. And then when that person shows up a few sessions down the way, there's no feeling of betrayal. And in the same, like I just don't understand how people are like, how there are DMs out there who are not really willing to take the time to talk to their players. If it's a one shot, maybe I understand. But for like a campaign, at the very end of every single one of my sessions on our Discord server, I have a separate chat channel called DM's Office. And at the very end, once the session ends, I say, okay, does anyone want to talk to me about what happened? And inevitably, 3 or 4 of my 5-person party are like, yeah, can I just talk to you for a real quick thing about something that happened? I want to work something out about my backstory that I think you should know about. Or I have something that I want to smart. Or I have something that I want to do next session or between, we have a lot of downtime in my campaign where, they'll be like the night will end and they will say, we'll end a session as they're all sleeping at a tavern. Maybe someone will be like, oh yeah, I want it like the next day. Here are the things I want to plan, which is not only, I think I personally take those as gifts because then I don't have to wait until next session to be like, okay, what do you guys want to do? And they're all like, oh, I want to go shopping. I want to go confront my dad. I know what they want to do beforehand because they've been gracious enough to be like, hey, just to give you a heads up for next time, I want to go shopping. So I say, okay, so I make sure the next time we have a, next session, I have the prices pulled up for clothes or weapons or whatever. But also like a lot of the times, like they were to be introduced to someone, maybe they had a question about, something that happened in their past that they want to get straight with me. So I just have that little time set apart for like an hour or so after sessions where we can just, or even before sessions, I'll show up early. So we can just hash things out because the real story takes place on that 3 or 4 hours or however many you do when you're all together around the table. And like there is so much that you can do to ensure that you're efficient with your time at that table. And there are things that you can handle outside of session. I really think communication, and you'll see this on any D&D GM tips video, the key is always going to be communication. You're supposed to be playing with your friends and no one's, I don't think anyone will be offended if you just start asking questions. If you're worried as a DM that like you're going to give things away and they're not going to be as impactful, like you want to surprise them with something, I still think it's better to just ask and just say, hey, were you ever in a relationship? Do you think your character was ever in a relationship with anyone? And if they say no, then you don't surprise them with someone. If they say yes, you talk about it and you put it off and then you can surprise them later. They will forget, or at the very least, they will not care. The surprise is not for them. The surprise is for the rest of the party. When you say, a flaxen-haired, maiden approaches your table and says, Marcus Heavenridge, what are you doing here in this tavern? You're my husband. And the true surprise answer to that thing is not, what? I've never seen you before in my life. The true thing that's going to make your party go, oh my God, holy shit, is when Marcus Heavenridge goes, look, Beatrice, I can't talk with you right now. I have to talk with my party. That answer is going to make everyone at the table be like, what? Who the hell is this person? It is not going to happen if the answer from Marcus is, I've never seen you before in my life. So talk to your players. Just figure it out beforehand. The surprises are never for the player. They're for the rest of the party. I promise you that's the way that you should look at it.
Yes, I agree. And the last note I want to touch on too is communication is always the answer, and the times when it's not are usually because of personality issues. Either because, some sort of interpersonal thing, like maybe the DM is the kind of person who has an attitude towards, maybe they came from like old school D&D, like 2nd edition 3.5. They're very number crunchy. They're very murder hobo-y when they play. So when they're DMing, they're kind of callous and they throw way big threats at you guys, and like it just feels oppressive to play under them, right? Now, obviously communication is key, but if that person's refusing to budge and they're just like tough shit, you have to then make that decision. Do I want to continue playing in this game where I'm not having fun because my DM is being kind of a jerk about things, right? That's another thing. I think probably Crit Crab talks about that too. It's just like there's a lot of horror stories where people are just jerks in general, and no amount of communication can fix a jerk. Like you can try, but good luck.
Oh yeah, no D&D is better than bad D&D. I fully believe that. And I would never presume to tell anyone how to play. I've been making a lot of things and framing it in the terms of advice. Take it or not. Like I've said, I've been DMing for a while, but I've only been full campaign DMing for a little bit comparatively. Do what makes you happy, but like please just promise me that like you'll at least consider some of these things, because like once again, I would never presume to tell you how to play. But these are the things that, at least in my life, have made me a happier person and have led to more enjoyable gameplay for me.
Yeah, I totally agree with most of what you said. I think we mesh well because we have a similar play style, or similar things that we look for when we play D&D, which is why, like, you're saying all this stuff. I'm like, yep. Like, I agree with all this, and it's just we
need to be in a campaign together. Is what I'm gathering
like,
from this.
I wish I had more time to play more games. Man.
I know.
I am stuck here editing audio and making animations. What a bummer. I'm just kidding.
So sad.
Anyway, I think that is our time. And I, again, want to thank you for coming on the show, Fel. It was great to have you.
Yeah, it was great being here. I've listened to like I've listened to every episode. So it's really exciting to, just like Dingo, it's like, and I know we keep talking about her. I'm just excited to be on the podcast with you, having been someone who's listened to all of the episodes.
It's a bit surreal, the reception that it's been getting recently. And then people thinking like, wow, this is like a really good show. And I'm like, oh my God, did I make something good? Am I allowed to accept that?
You're not allowed. I'll stop you there. You're not allowed to make anything good.
Thank you. Put me back in my place, please.
Good. Yeah. I'll be sure to do that. Don't you worry.
Everybody, please go check out Feltheleb's channel and follow him on Twitter if you're a Twitter person. He's a very great guy. Anyway, thank you for coming on to the show. And I don't know. I'll talk to you later. I want to know when that next heist campaign is happening.
Yeah, I wrote another one shot and I have yet to play that, but the next thing that I make that's non-campaign related will be the second round of that heist. Yeah. Which will be a lot of fun, I hope.
We'll talk more about that too after this, but thank you everybody for listening. Have a great day. I will talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.